The sun hung mercilessly in the Texas sky as Logan Daniels squinted against the harsh glare, his weathered hand adjusting the brim of his Stetson. The endless expanse of prairie stretched before him, broken only by the silhouette of what appeared to be an abandoned wagon. Something wasn't right. Logan had ridden this trail between Marfa and El Paso enough times to know that no one in their right mind would stop here, not with water so scarce and Comanche territory just north. His horse, a sturdy Palomino named Chance, nickered softly as they approached. That's when Logan saw her, a woman huddled in the scant shade of the broken wagon, her dress torn and dirty, her eyes closed as if in prayer or perhaps surrender to the inevitable. "Madam," Logan called out, dismounting carefully. "Madam, are you all right?" The woman's eyes flew open, revealing startling green irises that somehow maintained their vibrancy despite her haggard appearance. She scrambled backward, fear etched across her face. "Stay back." Her voice was hoarse, likely from thirst, but there was steel in it. Logan raised his hands slowly. "I mean you no harm, I'm just passing through. Name's Logan Daniels. I ranch about 20 miles east of Marfa." She clutched a small knife in her trembling hand. "How do I know you're not one of them?" "One of who, madam?" "The men who attacked our wagon train 3 days ago. They took everything, everyone." Her voice broke and the knife wavered in her grasp. "I'm alone, as you can see." Logan gestured to the empty landscape around them, "And I'd say you need help more than you need to fear me right now." The woman seemed to consider this, her gaze assessing him with surprising clarity given her condition. Finally, she lowered the knife. "Grace," she said quietly. "Grace Sutton." Logan approached cautiously, offering his canteen. "You're a long way from anywhere, Miss Sutton." She accepted the water, drinking deeply before answering. "Our wagon train was headed to California. I hid when the bandits came. Everyone else was either taken or—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Logan surveyed the broken wagon, noting the splintered wood and scattered belongings. This had been no ordinary robbery. This was violence for the sake of it. "You've been alone out here for 3 days?" he asked, unable to hide the admiration in his voice. Grace nodded, her chin lifting slightly. "I tried to follow the wagon train's path, but without a horse." She gestured helplessly at her torn boots. Logan made a decision then, one that would change the course of both their lives, though he couldn't have known it at the time. "Miss Sutton," he said firmly, "you're not left anymore." Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of hope crossing her face for perhaps the first time in days. "I can't take you to California," Logan continued, "but I can offer you shelter at my ranch until you decide what to do next. It's not much, but it's safe. Why would you help me?" Suspicion clouded her features again. "You don't know me. Out here we help each other or we die," Logan said simply. "That's just how it is." The year was 1875 and the Texas frontier was no place for mercy or weakness. But neither was it a place without honor, at least not in Logan's view of things. Grace struggled to her feet, swaying slightly. Logan resisted the urge to steady her, sensing she needed to stand on her own. "I have nothing to offer in return," she said stiffly. "Everything I owned was in that wagon. I'm not asking for payment, Miss Sutton." Logan turned to Chance and adjusted the saddle. "But we should move quickly. Night falls fast out here and we've got a ways to go." He helped her onto Chance's back before mounting behind her. The closeness was unavoidable and he felt her stiffen against him. "I'll walk if you'd prefer," he offered. "No," she said after a moment. "This is practical." As they rode east toward his ranch, Logan found himself wondering about this woman who had survived alone in the merciless Texas wilderness. She wasn't like any Eastern lady he'd encountered in his 32 years. There was something in her quiet dignity that spoke of a deeper strength than mere survival. "Where are you from originally, Miss Sutton?" he asked as they crossed a dry creek bed. "Philadelphia," she replied. "My father was a watchmaker." "That's a long way from Texas." "Yes," she paused. "He died last winter. Pneumonia. There was nothing left for me there." Logan nodded, understanding the unspoken. A woman alone in 1875 had few options, especially one without family or fortune. So you joined a wagon train west. I thought. Her voice faltered. I thought California might offer opportunities. A new beginning. The sun was beginning to set when they crested a hill, revealing a modest ranch house nestled in a shallow valley. A small barn and corral stood nearby, along with a vegetable garden that was Logan's private pride, though he'd never admit it to the cowboys who occasionally worked for him during branding season. "It isn't much," Logan said, suddenly aware of how humble his home might appear to someone from Philadelphia. Grace turned slightly to look at him, her profile catching the golden light of sunset. "It looks like heaven to me, Mr. Daniels." "Logan," he corrected gently. "Out here, formalities don't last long." "Logan," she repeated, the name sounding different in her voice. As they approached the ranch house, a dog came bounding out to greet them, a motley brown mutt with one ear standing up and the other flopping comically. "That's Rusty," Logan explained. "He's harmless, just noisy." Grace's face softened at the sight of the dog. "Hello, Rusty." Logan helped her down from Chance, noticing how she winced as her feet touched the ground. Without asking permission, he swept her into his arms. "Mr. Daniels," she protested. "Your feet are torn up and my porch has splinters," he explained matter-of-factly. Just being practical again. He carried her into the house and set her gently on a wooden chair by the table. The interior was simple but clean: a main room with a stone fireplace, a wooden table with 4 chairs, a few shelves of books that might have surprised her, and doors leading to what she presumed were bedrooms. "You'll take my room," Logan said, already moving to light a lamp. "I'll bunk in the spare room. It's where I keep my saddles and such, but there's a cot." "I couldn't possibly." "You can and you will," he cut her off firmly. "No arguments on that score." Grace fell silent, watching as he moved efficiently around the room, stoking the banked fire in the fireplace and putting a kettle on to boil. "Are you hungry?" he asked. As if in answer, her stomach growled audibly and a flush crept up her cheeks. Yes, I haven't eaten since yesterday. I had a few pieces of hardtack, but they're gone now." Logan nodded and set about preparing a simple meal of beans, salt pork, and the last of his sourdough bread. As he worked, he noticed Grace's eyelids growing heavy. "Food first, then sleep," he said gently. "You need both." She straightened, clearly fighting exhaustion. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to be poor company." "Nothing to apologize for. You've survived something that would have broken most people." She looked at him curiously. "You speak as if you know something about surviving, Mr. Dan Logan." His hands stilled briefly over the cooking pot. "I suppose we all have our stories out here." Grace seemed to sense his reluctance and didn't press further. Instead, she asked, "How long have you had this ranch?" 7 years, Logan replied, grateful for the change in subject. "Bought it after the war, needed a place that was my own." "The war," she echoed. "Were you?" "Confederate cavalry," he said shortly. "Not something I'm proud of anymore, but I was young and full of foolish notions." To his surprise, Grace didn't recoil or judge. "My brother fought for the Union. He didn't come home either." Logan served the simple meal, and they ate in companionable silence for a while. Despite her obvious hunger, Grace ate with deliberate manners that spoke of her upbringing. "Tomorrow we'll see about getting you some proper clothes," Logan said as he cleared their plates. "I've got some things that might work with alteration, and we should tend to those feet." "You're very kind," Grace said softly. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you, not looking for repayment." "Just doing what anyone would." "No," she said, shaking her head. "Not anyone. I've learned that much on this journey." Later, after showing her to his room and making sure she had clean water to wash with, Logan settled on the narrow cot in his makeshift tack room. The events of the day replayed in his mind, finding Grace, bringing her home, the way she'd looked in the dying light of sunset. He had no business thinking of her that way, he reminded himself sternly. She was under his protection now, nothing more. Soon enough, she'd decide to continue on to California or perhaps return east. His life would return to its solitary rhythm, just as he preferred it. But as sleep claimed him, Logan couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in his carefully ordered existence. The next morning, Logan woke at dawn out of habit. He moved quietly through the house, not wanting to disturb Grace. To his surprise, he found her already up, attempting to kindle the fire in the kitchen stove. "Good morning," he said, startling her slightly. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I wanted to make coffee, but I'm afraid I'm not familiar with this type of stove." "No need to apologize. This old thing has a knack to it." Logan knelt beside her and demonstrated how to adjust the damper properly. "There you go, should catch properly now. Thank you." She smiled, and Logan noticed for the first time how it transformed her face, bringing a warmth to her features that hadn't been there the day before. "How are your feet this morning?" he asked, trying to keep his tone casual. "Better, I think, though I'm afraid my boots are beyond salvation." "We'll figure something out. I need to ride into Marfa today for supplies anyway. The general store might have something suitable." While Grace made coffee with the beans he provided, Logan went outside to tend to the livestock. He had a modest operation: 20 head of cattle, 3 horses including Chance, a milk cow named Bessie, and a handful of chickens that provided more eggs than he could eat alone. When he returned to the house, he found Grace had not only made coffee, but had also prepared a simple breakfast of eggs and the leftover sourdough. "You didn't need to do that," he said, though the smell reminded him how long it had been since someone else had cooked in his kitchen. "Please," she replied, "it's the least I can do. Besides, I'm not accustomed to idleness." They ate together and Logan outlined his plan for the day. "I'll ride into town for supplies. It's about an hour's ride. You should rest here." Grace looked momentarily alarmed. "You're leaving?" "Just for a few hours," he assured her. "Rusty will stay with you and no one comes out this way uninvited." She nodded, though he could see she was uneasy. "Of course, I'm being foolish." "It's not foolish to be cautious, especially after what you've been through." Logan hesitated, then added, "There's a rifle above the door. Do you know how to use it?" "My father taught me," she said, surprising him again. "He believed a woman should be able to defend herself." "Smart man," Logan remarked. "I won't be gone long." Before he left, Logan brought her one of his shirts and a pair of trousers that had shrunk in washing. "These might help until we can get you something more suitable." Grace accepted the clothing with a grateful nod. "Thank you." The ride to Marfa gave Logan time to think. What exactly was he doing, bringing a strange woman to his home? He'd lived alone for 7 years by choice. The war had left its scars, not all of them visible, and he'd found peace in solitude. But something about Grace Sutton had compelled him to act, to offer more than just passing assistance. Marfa was a small but growing town, situated at a crucial junction between El Paso and the eastern part of the state. The general store was owned by Henry Miller, a transplanted New Yorker who had come west for his health and stayed for the opportunity. "Logan Daniels," Henry greeted him as he entered. "Twice in 1 month, must be a special occasion." "Just restocking, Henry," Logan replied, handing over his list, which now included items for Grace fabric for dresses, women's boots if available, hairpins, and other necessities he'd hastily scribbled down. Henry raised an eyebrow as he read. "These aren't your usual supplies." Logan had anticipated questions and prepared a simple explanation. "Got a relative staying with me for a while, my cousin's widow." "Didn't know you had family," Henry remarked, though he had the good sense not to pry further. "Not much," Logan said truthfully. "Will you have any trouble with these items?" The boots might be a problem. "Don't get much call for ladies' footwear in specific sizes, but Mrs. Miller might have something that would work. What size does your cousin's widow wear?" Logan realized he had no idea. "Small," he said helplessly. "She's not very tall," Henry chuckled. "Let me ask Martha. She's got a good eye for these things." While Henry gathered his supplies, Logan visited the sheriff's office to inquire about reports of bandit activity. Sheriff Tom Watson was a former Texas Ranger who had settled in Marfa after taking a bullet in his leg that left him with a permanent limp. "Heard rumors. Watson admitted when Logan described what had happened to Grace's wagon train. But nothing confirmed. Comancheros, maybe, or just ordinary outlaws. Hard to tell these days. Any survivors turn up besides, miss? Besides the lady I mentioned, Watson shook his head. Not that I've heard. But if they were headed to California, they might have reported it elsewhere. Logan nodded, disappointed but not surprised. If you hear anything. I'll send word, Watson promised. How long is she staying with you? Not sure yet, Logan answered honestly. As long as she needs, I suppose. The sheriff gave him a knowing look. Just be careful, Logan. Lone woman, unmarried man folks talk. Let them, Logan said shortly. She needed help. That's all there is to it. But as he rode back to the ranch, supplies packed carefully in Chance's saddlebags, Logan wondered if that really was all there was to it. He'd known Grace Sutton for barely a day, yet already she occupied more of his thoughts than he was comfortable admitting. When he returned home, he found Grace in the garden, kneeling despite her injured feet, carefully weeding between rows of vegetables. She'd rolled up the sleeves of his shirt and tied it at her waist. His trousers were cuffed several times and held up with one of his old belts. She looked ridiculous and somehow perfect at the same time. You should be resting, he called as he dismounted. She looked up, shielding her eyes against the sun. I've rested enough. Your garden needed attention. Most men would say I shouldn't have a garden at all, Logan remarked as he approached. Not manly enough. Most men would be hungry then, Grace replied with unexpected humor. Besides, it's beautiful. I didn't expect to find such care taken with vegetables. Logan felt oddly pleased by her approval. My mother kept a garden back in Virginia. I guess some things stay with you. He helped her to her feet, noticing she winced slightly. I found some boots that might work for you, and other things, fabric, needles, whatever the shopkeeper's wife thought you might need. Grace's eyes widened. You bought all that for me. But the cost, don't worry about that, Logan interrupted. I don't have many expenses out here. They walked together to the house, where Logan showed her what he'd purchased. Grace ran her fingers over the calico fabric with something like reverence. It's been so long since I had anything new, she admitted. After Father died, I sold most of our belongings to pay his debts. There's no rush to repay me, Logan assured her. Nevertheless, I will, Grace said firmly. I won't be a charity case, Mr. Daniels. Logan, he reminded her gently. Logan, she conceded with a small smile. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed between them. Grace proved herself adept at household tasks, but more importantly to Logan, she seemed to genuinely appreciate the ranch and the life it represented. She took over the garden completely, expanding it with herbs and flowers. She mended his clothes without being asked and improved his simple meals with thoughtful touches. For his part, Logan found himself talking more than he had in years. Something about Grace invited confidence, and he gradually told her about his life before and during the war, about his decision to come west afterward, about the hard early years establishing his small ranch. Why cattle? She asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Why not something easier? Logan chuckled. Is there something easier out here? Fair point, she acknowledged. But still, it seems a difficult life. It is, he agreed, but it's an honest one. After the war, I needed that. Simplicity, honesty. Grace nodded as if she understood perfectly. The war changed everything, didn't it? Not just the country, but people too. Some for better, some for worse, Logan said. I'd like to think it made me better eventually, though it took time. What were you before? She asked. Before the war, a fool, he said simply. A young man from a good Virginia family who thought he knew how the world worked. I was studying law in Richmond when the war broke out. And now you're a cattleman in Texas, she marveled. Life takes unexpected turns. Speaking of unexpected, Logan said, shifting the conversation away from himself, have you given any thought to what you'll do next? I'm not rushing you, he added quickly. You're welcome here as long as you like, but I imagine you had plans beyond surviving a bandit attack. Grace was quiet for so long that Logan wondered if he'd offended her, Finally, she spoke. I don't know anymore. California was never really the goal, just a way, a new start. And now, she turned to look at him, her green eyes reflecting the dying light. Now I'm not sure what I want, except, Logan prompted when she didn't continue. Except I know I don't want to leave here yet, she finished softly. If that's all right. Their eyes held for a long moment, and Logan felt something shift between them, some barrier giving way. More than all right, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. The summer days lengthened, bringing heat and occasional violent thunderstorms that swept across the Texas plains. During one such storm, as rain lashed against the windows and lightning split the sky, Logan found Grace standing at the open door, watching the tempest with fascination. It's magnificent, she breathed as he approached. We had storms in Philadelphia, of course, but nothing like this. It's as if the sky is being torn apart. A massive thunderclap shook the house, and Grace instinctively stepped back, bumping into Logan's chest. His hands came up to steady her, resting lightly on her shoulders. Sorry, she said, but didn't move away. No need, he murmured, suddenly acutely aware of her closeness. The scent of her hair, the warmth of her body. Grace turned slowly to face him, her expression unreadable in the dim light. Another flash of lightning illuminated her features for an instant, eyes wide, lips slightly parted. Logan, she whispered, his name a question and answer all at once. He knew he should step back, maintain the careful distance they'd established. But instead, he found himself leaning closer, drawn by something more powerful than propriety or reason. Their lips met as thunder crashed overhead, a gentle contact that deepened as Grace's hands came up to rest against his chest. Logan cradled her face, marveling at its softness, at the impossible reality of holding her this way. When they finally parted, both breathing unsteadily, Logan rested his forehead against hers. I didn't plan for this to happen, he admitted. Nor did I, she replied, but I'm not sorry that it has. People will talk, he warned, echoing the sheriff's words. Grace laughed softly. Let them. Who's to hear them out here anyway? But reality intruded as summer gave way to fall. Logan received word from Sheriff Watson that survivors from Grace's Wagon train had been found near El Paso. A family with 2 young children had escaped the attack and made their way to safety, eventually reporting the incident to authorities. They might have information about the others, Logan told Grace as they sat at the kitchen table. About what really happened, Grace went pale. I don't know if I want to know, those images. I've just started to sleep without nightmares. Logan covered her hand with his own. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, but if you'd like closure. Would you come with me, she asked suddenly, to El Paso if I decided to go? Of course, he said without hesitation. Whatever you need. Grace was quiet for a long moment. What if what I need is to stay here? With you, the question hung in the air between them, weighted with implications. They had grown closer over the months, their initial cautious friendship evolving into something deeper. They had shared kisses and confidences, but had carefully avoided defining what was happening between them. Is that what you want? Logan asked carefully. Yes, she said simply. But I need to know if it's what you want too. This was your sanctuary, your solitude. I don't want to intrude on that if, Grace, he interrupted gently. My life was quiet before you came, peaceful even, but it wasn't full. He took a deep breath. I love you. I think I have since I found you by that broken wagon, though I was too stubborn to admit it even to myself. Tears filled her eyes, but she was smiling. I love you too. I've been afraid to say it, afraid that once I did, something would happen to take it all away. Nothing will take this away, Logan promised, drawing her into his arms. But there is something we should do to make it official if you're amenable. Grace looked up at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. Are you asking me to marry you, Logan Daniels? I believe I am, Grace Sutton, he replied with a smile, though I'm making a hash of it. Yes, she said before he could continue. Yes, I will marry you. They were married 2 weeks later in Marfa's small church with Sheriff Watson and Henry Miller and his wife as witnesses. Grace wore a dress she had made from the fabric Logan had bought her that first day, and Logan wore the only suit he owned, purchased years ago for a cattle auction in San Antonio. "You may kiss your bride," the preacher announced after they had exchanged their vows. As Logan bent to kiss Grace, he whispered against her lips, "You're not left anymore, not ever again." "Neither are you," she whispered back. Their life together unfolded with the seasons. The small ranch prospered under their joint care. Grace's garden expanded to provide not only for their table but also to sell produce in Marfa. Logan's cattle herd grew steadily, and he built a reputation for fair dealing and quality stock. A year after their marriage, their son William was born, followed 2 years later by a daughter they named Catherine after Logan's mother. The house expanded to first an additional bedroom, then a larger kitchen, finally a proper parlor where Grace gave music lessons to children from Marfa. They never did travel to El Paso to meet the survivors of the Wagon train attack. Instead, the family eventually passed through Marfa on their continued journey west, and Grace was able to learn what had happened to the others. Some had been killed, others taken captive but later escaped or were rescued. The bandits, a mixed group of outlaws, had eventually been caught and hanged in New Mexico territory. "Do you ever regret not going to California?" Logan asked her once, years later, as they sat on their expanded porch watching their children play with Rusty's puppies. Grace considered the question seriously, as she did all things. "I think about the woman I was then, what she was looking for," she said finally. She wanted security, purpose, a place to belong. She reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "I found all of that here with you, so no, I don't regret it. This is where I was meant to be all along." "Funny how things work out," Logan mused. "If I hadn't decided to take that shortcut that day." "You would have found me anyway," Grace said with certainty. "Some things are just meant to be." As the sun set over their ranch, painting the Texas sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Logan reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a broken wagon in the wilderness to a home filled with love and laughter, from 2 solitary souls to a family bound by choice and devotion. "You know what?" he said, squeezing her hand gently. "What?" Grace asked, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I'm glad I took that shortcut." She laughed, the sound still as captivating to him as it had been the first time he heard it. "So am I, my love, so am I." And as darkness fell across the land they had made their own, Logan and Grace Daniels remained side by side, watching over all they had built together, secure in the knowledge that neither of them would ever be left behind again.